movie is definitely way better than anybody's ever given it credit for. People should definitely go back and rewatch this one. Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tyra here with another struggle review, here to discuss Deep Cover. Now this movie is from 1992 and it stars Lawrence Fishburne. Now before we get into all things great casting and dope ass soundtracks, I need you guys to drop down and subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that and then we're going to come back and discuss. I did not remember this movie being this good. I was really invested in everything that was going on, and then we add all of these layers of nuance with our main character. Go watch Deep Cover.
Go back.
Now that you guys have hopefully subscribed to see more of me, let's get into this video. But before we jump into the movie, I have to give a shout out to the person who paid for it and requested this film. So if you happen to creep with me as I crawl through the hood, maniac, lunatic, call Snoop Eastwood, it's not because of me. It's because of this person right here. Thank you so much for supporting me and paying for this content. Now, getting into this movie was directed by Bill Duke. I know he has a lot of notoriety as far as his acting capability, but we never hear him mentioned in the conversations as far as directors, especially not Black directors. But he has directed movies such as Hoodlum, A Rage in Harlem, Sister Act 2, A Raisin in the Sun. They all offer something different, give a lot of diversity culturally. Most of these movies have an all-Black cast. And even though these movies weren't written by him, this movie in particular being written by Michael Tolkien, a lot of his movies seem to be pivoting towards that throwback classical film Black Noir era, and it really lends itself well to his directing style and really brings these scripts to life to let you know that he is a skilled director. He was not just, acting, Sergeant Matt, Captain Earl, he done fucked up. He is a really great director. Now, right away, we open with me dancing. Of course, the music is so heavily based in hip hop here. For this to be a 90s soundtrack, everything is so strong on the bass, the instrumentals, it is so good. We open with Jewel. I wonder if it's lust, bam, out, lust. Everything just makes you want to dance. It's so good here. You can literally just throw on this soundtrack and let it play. Every single song here is so strategically placed to go with the theme and the mood of the movie. But then it's just so good just for a soundtrack. But then we get into all of this nuance and all of this, poetry and this depth that I didn't know that this movie carried from watching it when I first watched it. When we open with "So Gather Round" as I run it down and unravel my pedigree, what? The narration here being given to us by Lawrence Fishburne, it enriched this movie so much. It really adds to this neo-noir feel of the film. Even though it's set in the 90s, it very much gives you this 1940s deep dark crime drama. Very much so like Hoodlum or Devil in the Blue Dress. And then it just made me instantly remember damn, Lawrence Fishburne, Larry, he has been outside acting for a very long time, just building his little film repertoire, his whole career, all the way from movies like Cornbread Earl and Me, Pee-wee's Playhouse, a whole ton of supporting roles in movies like Apocalypse Now, The Color Purple, Nightmare on Elm Street, Kings of New York. He did not really pop out until he got, initial leading roles like maybe School Days, and that was, later in the late 80s. But as far as just getting that full-blown Lawrence Fishburne experience. He is, really leading this movie. We really didn't get that until we got to see him as Furious Styles in Boys in the Hood. And then we get, this movie here. He really didn't pop out until the 90s. The 90s was such a great era for the characters. A lot of people just, start and finish with, okay, he was Morpheus. Then we work our way on back up. We love Morpheus, but there was a time when it was just all Lawrence everything, and he was giving like these really great diverse acting performance in every single movie that came out. And then his acting in the way that he really emotes as an actor, it really brings me back to what I said about James Earl Jones in my Claudine review. There is something about those theatrical, classically trained actors. They bring something to movies that a lot of other actors don't bring. There is this deep coded richness, this Renaissance Shakespearean thing happens where everything that they say holds weight and it carries, and that really helps with him being the sole narrator in this movie and really getting you invested in his character. Oh y'all, I was melting. Now, right away, we are introduced to DEA officer Russell Stevens, and we see the situation that follows him and torments him for his entire life. Not only is his father gunned down in front of him, but he is a junkie and he is trying to rob a store. All that he can ever think about is how not to end up like his dad. How can I stay as far away from this as possible? Why don't I get one of the most noble, selfless, honorable jobs of becoming a police officer? Not only is he priding himself in being good at his job, but it's almost like he's striving for perfection. Everything but like my father. You gonna cry, nigga? You cry, nigga? You still my favorite little nigga. Like, oh, okay, Glenn. Absolutely funny. But in his quest to prove that he is better than the situation that he is coming from, once we see him get further and further into his job and get deeper undercover, this causes him to have a moral complex and do some questionable things to accomplish what he feels like is his goal of being deep undercover. When all along from the very beginning, he was targeted by the DEA for the parts of himself that he was trying his hardest to stay away from. The broken home, the drug addicted father, the repressed emotions. He doesn't really have a deep connection with anyone at any given time for him to even feel like he doesn't want to be undercover in the first place. What's the difference between a black man and a nigger? They already had it set in their mind as far as the DEA that he was just a nigga, and he was just the right nigga to do the job that they needed to be done. He could easily blend in, be used as a tool in spaces and places that they could never get into when it came to the streets and to drugs. Immediately, Stevens needs to be everything but himself and exactly what the DEA wants him to be. Not only is he a nigga with something to prove, but he is a nigga who is gonna go beyond and above to do his job and excel at it. Meanwhile, he has never even had a drink. He was used from the very beginning. If you ever go sit down for any kind of job and anybody asks you what's the difference between a black man and a nigga, get up and run. So once we have now undercover officer John Hull completely sunken in and invested into the fact that, oh, whatever I'm doing is for us to get to the greater good. This is for us to get to the higher ups, to really, get some of these drugs off the streets. This is for your people. Yeah, all these lies. We really get to see him meet all of these interesting characters as he works his own way up from being a low level on the street random drug dealer to actually being in control and in full-blown business with the higher ups who do actually make these decisions. But in the meantime, we are just selling drugs. We are just selling drugs, and we are putting even more product out there on the street for kids, black mothers, black young men. John is absolutely exceptional at his job. He is smart, he's quick on his feet, he's really witty, he is really great at blending in and gaining other people's trust. And even though it bothers him at first, we slowly see him become really desensitized to everything, to where there is no longer a fine line between who he actually is and who he is as an undercover officer. There is no longer a Steven, there is only John. So when we have people around him continue to die, sell, buy, slip further into their addictions, though he may feel some way about it, there's always that little short, smug, midget DEA officer there to pat him on the back, remind him of what we're out here for, what's the greater purpose, this is what we're doing, when that couldn't be further from the truth. Not when we have buff-ass territorial drug dealers running around the streets with their white woman, having a whole Arnold Schwarzenegger come, hasta la vista, motherfucker. Like, sir, this is not the Wild West. But it was allowed to be. That whole area, that whole neighborhood, it was allowed to be and go wherever and whatever, because absolutely nobody cared about the low people on the totem pole that these drugs are affecting. People like John, Ivy, and Eddie thrive in this environment. I think the best thing about this story is that even though a lot of these moments get outlandish, there is a lot of truth within this story of the way that they are handling John, what the real agenda is, and who they were really trying to protect. Let's get into Eddie for all of 2 seconds, coming through this movie with some comedy and all the one-liners in the world. You know, the judge said, "You're mighty beautiful. You must have some Navajo in you." She said, "Nah, Your Honor, I'm a Chicago hoe. You know, I once knew a brother named John. He loved to dance when he got it on. He made the pussy do the Watusi." And she said, "Oh, god damn, this rhythm is strong. You know, how you gonna diss my Nubian queen like that?" Crazy, absolutely crazy. Roger Smith as an actor, I really miss his presence. Like, a lot of times they would just call him like, "Oh, if we need a smug, fast-talking biracial, we are gonna call Roger Smith for the role." But he has a lot of dimension as an actor. He is really diverse. And just like with any other role that he has, he leaves a strong impact here, even though he doesn't have a whole lot of screen time. And he is really just a crazy crackhead here. He is also a stepping stone for John to get to where he needs to be. We need him to get next to Jeff Goldblum. Jeff Goldblum is absolutely everything. I love him as an actor, even though it feels like he gives us the exact same performance with the same cadence every single time we see him. Though it's, you know, that real monotone, direct, stoic thing that he has going on with his voice, it's very memorable and adds intensity to certain roles that he has, to where you feel like he is a little unstable and deranged. You see it here in this movie, and you see it very much so in movies like The Fly. Between Jeff Goldblum and Lawrence Fishburne, you would think that this movie would be discussed more, it would have a little bit more notoriety, but the soundtrack and the song for this movie way outshine the film. So when you think about Deep Cover, you're not thinking about the performances here, you're thinking about the song in the introduction of Snoop Dogg. Yeah, and you don't stop, cause it's 187 on the undercover cop. Creep with me as I crawl through the hood, maniac, lunatic, call him Snoop Eastwood. Oh, tonight's the night like Betty White, and I'm chilling, killing, thrilling. That's what you're thinking about instead of the great casting, great story writing, and character building. Outside of the great performance, of course, he is the main character. Lawrence Fishburne giving us John Holt and all of the complexities that he's dealing with having to be undercover. But the other character here that I love and I felt like unfolded really well, it was really interesting going back to watch it now, was Jeff Goldblum's character as David. He, as well as Felix Barboza, Agent Gary Carver, all of them are on this quest for notoriety, power, control. They have this God-like complex. You hear each of these men say several times, you know, "I am God, I'm God-like." In many ways, they mirror each other, even in the way that they try to use John, especially when we get into David. David already had Eddie on his side as, you know, oh, this is a black person. This is somebody who is going to legitimize my business. He never really wanted to invest in the business of the drugs. He wanted to pursue his designer drugs all along, but nobody took him serious as, you know, oh, he's Jewish, he's a lawyer, he's more on the corporate side, he never wants to get his hands dirty. But once they saw that John was involved, a street savvy black man, it legitimizes him and gets more people on board secure with what he's trying to do. But this also gives him this inner complex of, I really don't have any power. When we have Felix Barbosa just not take him serious, he's constantly trying to test him, constantly being abrasive, calling him out, trying to embarrass him. As the resentment grows, David becomes a totally different person, never quite satisfied with his daughter, his wife, the family life, literally wanting his cake and eating it too. He has something to prove and has that same big chip on his shoulder, just like John, which brings them closer together. But not only is he really involved and has a really strong relationship with John, David is really obsessed with all things Black, whether it's Black art, Black women, Black culture. He really desires to be taken just as serious as John when it comes to the business, but it's just not there for him. Even though they are extremely close, he really doesn't like the fact that he needs John to legitimize him, or, John is praised and he is put down in the same breath. So he is trying to figure out how he can get some of that. And I think the same can be said for Agent Gary. He really disdains the fact that he needs to use somebody like John to legitimize his career. He can go out, be in the forefront on the streets, selling the drugs, making the moves. But if I was to try to do something like that, or an officer of the same color, we would not get as far. So the best thing I can do here is display all of this power, try to have all of this control, try to let him know, that I'm God, I see and hear everything. He conveniently knows everything that John is going through, everything that's happening. Like him shooting Ivy, hasta la vista, motherfucker, I'll be back, ass in the bathroom, puts more pressure on John to sell more drugs, get deeper into the game, make more of these deals, but still try to display this sense of control and power when it's really John on the front lines risking his life. Meanwhile, we have John literally become his worst nightmare. Not only is he a drug dealer, but he's a murderer, and he eventually becomes a drug user. He's gotten so deep into the game that he not only sees David as a partner, but as a friend, somebody he owes loyalty to and somebody he needs to protect. Now, outside of his relationship with David and the trust that he thought he had with this DEA agent and agency that he is working for, there are three people in this movie that keep him grounded in reality and remind him of who he is. We have Victoria Dillard here portraying Betty. She is an African arts dealer who actually cleans all of the drug money. I absolutely love this woman's entire face. I always thought she was really beautiful, loved her in Out of Sync, movies like Ricochet. Always wish I could have saw a little bit more of her. Betty and John find companionship within each other. Not only are they attracted to one another, but she is in a sense undercover herself, because as soon as we meet her, it seems as if she doesn't want to be there. She is really out of it. She's a little dead inside, and you can tell that she wants more for her life than just cleaning dirty money and snorting coke all day. They see something within each other that makes the both of them just really wake up. Now, outside of that, when we get more into Victoria's character and we have him getting deeper in, he's, living a little bit more lavish. He's really starting to kind of forget who he is and almost wants this persona to be his reality. When I tell you Lawrence Fishburne was looking good outside, like he has never not been a handsome man, but it's something about that 90s era. It was like he was in his prime and he just looks so manly. Like the stars that we have today, like they look manly, but with the way, that unorganic thing that they have going on, it's almost like handsome with a hint of femininity. Not that we don't want you to look, presentable and clean, but it's just something about, like, he could look like a man, like he's gonna move like a man, smell like a man, pull your hair, just smell good, like the flirting. I was getting into it. I was like, all right, Larry, come the fuck outside. And we also have the local deadbeat crack addicted mother by Belinda, who has a very nice son. You can tell that John sees a lot of himself in him with, the parent dynamic. Sees this little boy kind of growing up the same way that he did and kind of has this complex from the very beginning to coddle and save him. Like, child, Belinda was putting a whole lot on it. You be careful crossing that street, James. Don't you dare tell me how to take care of my fucking kid. I take damn good care of my kid. My kid is clean. He is clean. Like, oh, girl. It's very hard taking care of a fucking kid, Mr. Hall. It's not an easy thing. You know, you get what I'm saying? But look, you like my kid, right? You like him? You like him, right? Like, I was thinking, you know, like he need a role model and like stuff like that. I was thinking I could let you have him for maybe like $3,000. You know, I was thinking about that. Like, girl, sit down. Crack had a strong hold in the 90s, boy, I swear. And then we have the legendary Clarence Williams III. You know, you gotta say his name like that. Like, you gotta be dramatic. Like, I love all the talent in this movie. Like, the cast was absolutely phenomenal. Clarence Williams here as that cop on the street is literally the only legit person out there trying to really stop what's going on. Once we get further into the story, we realize that this is just a full-blown situation of one hand washing the other. Clarence's own partner is on the wrong side of the law. The people from the DEA, from, you know, the police, lawyers, judges, everybody is in the business of protecting and profiting for themselves, moving up for themselves, and protecting these people who are supposedly bringing all these drugs in that we are trying to take down. He is the one legitimate person on the street who is really trying to make a difference. And even though he doesn't know that John is an undercover officer, he sees something in him the entire movie that lets him know that this isn't really who you are. You do care about what you're doing. You do care about these drugs, and you don't belong here. Through scriptures, prayer books, and believing in Christianity, because these are my African American babies. And by selling that stuff, it's almost like you're putting a gun to their head. And let me mind you, I'm like a mad dog after a bone. I'll be all over you like stink on doo-doo. Like, if anybody can say doo-doo with a straight face, give him an award, goddamn. Just all the emoting, the great acting. Ray Nathan, my baby. I'm sorry. Woo! Like, oh, I miss it. Yes. Clarence Williams and Lawrence Fishburne play really, really well off of each other, which is why I'm sure they were paired to play again off of each other in Hoodlum. Oh man, did you touch my family? No. I said, did you touch my family? I said, fucking no. Like, oh, I'm gonna go watch Hoodlum today. Now, in the end, we have David so deep in when he realizes that he couldn't even trust the agency that he was working for. Not only is there no loyalty in the business of being a drug dealer, but there is no loyalty for you as a DEA agent. This is where we have him fully commit to just being a drug dealer. That's all y'all ever wanted me to be in the first place. Who gonna check me, boo? But outside of that, we have some really good, intense action scenes in this movie that I did not expect. The whole slap your hand flinching scene between David and Barboza, it is really good because we see all of this deep-seated resentment growing within David to where he changes completely as a person. We're not just watching John change, we are watching him as well. He's no longer, you know, donning and wearing these suits. He's, you know, opting to be dressed in all black, slicking his hair back, and he, you know, no longer has a problem pulling a trigger and killing someone. He doesn't need John to do that anymore. That hand flinching, like, oh, it is just such a good scene. And the same thing can be said for when we have John call out the fact that Barboza is a snitch and he is wearing, you know, a wire. He is giving them up. We have that great high-speed chase. Get the fuck out. Like, I'll see you in hell. Yeah, we'll have shrimp. Get the fuck out. Like, oh, it was so good. I was like, oh, I didn't remember all of this. David having that, you know, deep moment of redemption, of realize, you know, Felix is the rat. Felix is a rat. That means we get to kill you. We already sat through you doing the same thing when you felt like Eddie was a rat and we watched you beat him to a pulp. It's just so satisfying. Now, in the end, we end off with, motherfucker, you thought I'd let you live? You thought I'd let you get away? I got you. I got you twice. We end with John being completely invested in being a drug dealer. He not only protects David and Betty, but he kills a top drug dealer who is trying to put the squeeze on him and David after they kill Felix. But none of it really matters in the end because it was never about killing them. It was always about protecting this politician who is really the ringleader and on top of this drug dealer food chain to supply whatever he's doing. Now, Belinda dying of an overdose and Clarence Williams, the preacher, trying to be a one-man patrol show. Like, sir, you get on the ground. Like, what are you doing? You're about to die. I am an officer of the law. I'm going to do my job, and I'm not going to let these drugs hit the streets. I love how he kept calling for backup and nobody showed up. He just never had a clue at just really how deep this ran, and that the person was sitting next to him couldn't be trusted. Nobody was there to stop John, and nobody was there to protect him. So he eventually got shot by, of all people, David. This completely makes John remember who he really is. I'm not John. I'm not a drug dealer. I am Russell Stevens Jr. and I am a police officer. I absolutely love Jeff Goldblum's acting in that moment and how nonchalant he is. Like, freeze, David. Put the gun down. You are, what are you talking about? You're a cop. I'm a lawyer. Who gives a damn? Get the fuck up. Like, it's very much so giving In Too Deep. This whole movie gives, In Too Deep. This was very much so a copy and paste situation for that movie. Now, even though David is dead and we have Russell now remembering exactly who he is and he's on, the right side of the law, all is not said and done, and he still needs to clean this up, testify, give a little soft shoe. Bitch, did you just tell me to go soft shoe? To the committee to show that everything is on the up and up. And you see that this side, the DEA, all of this, governmental whatever, it's just as dirty as the people out there selling all of these drugs. They were trying to use Betty for leverage to get him to, do what they wanted him to do. Just as David and other organizations were so eager and willing to give her up and kill her on the other side. Nothing had changed. But we really do get to see that he really never lost a sense of who he was, even though he was full blown into, dealing the drugs, and I'm going to be what you guys are trying to make me out to be. I'm not crazy, and I'm going to have this moment recorded so I can use it. Not only protecting and saving his own ass, getting immunity for himself and Betty, but exposing a portion of the organization. Things are not as they seem, and everybody here is just dirty. This is something that I no longer want to be a part of. We even have, that good gratification of him punching little Gary's ass in the stomach for his comment. Like, he knows who he is now. Like, you can no longer speak to me that way. You can no longer, require me to give a little soft shoe. I'm gonna leave and I'm gonna exit my own way and my own style, and also get a little revenge. Like, it was real fairy tale child, because I was like, if this was a real organization, brother would have been shot. He would have been shot down and they would have rolled Betty right next to his ass. But no, this is movie. This is Hollywood. So not only does he get away, but he gets away with all of that money, still knowing who he is. I'm no longer a cop. I'm not a drug dealer, but I'm not a fool either to give this money back. Say what? Like, no. I'm leaving with Betty. I'm leaving with this young man. And I am leaving with this money in tow. I am both, part Russell, and I'm also part John, and that's okay. And we also see him let go of that guilt that he's been carrying around, that bloody money from his dad. You still my favorite little nigga. He let it go. He left it all there, and then we have the score plan and the trench coat blowing in the wind, all player like, it was popping. I loved it. Like, everything here was just absolutely awesome. This movie still holds up. It was a great watch, and I would definitely watch it again. If you have not seen Deep Cover, get up under some covers and go watch it. Well, you guys, that was my review for Deep Cover. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop down and tell me what you thought about my review and what you thought about this film. Did I break it down to your liking? Did I leave out anything? Did you learn anything new? Have you ever even seen this film? I look forward so much to reading your comments. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. All that good stuff, because it helps me. I'll see you guys next time for my next review. Bye.